Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us on today's Les Encres PDO Thread podcast. And I am joined by the one and only amazing, great PA Clarke. And I'm thrilled to share all of his knowledge and experience with us today. Good morning, PA Clarke.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you doing today?
Doing well and super excited to engage in this conversation with you. I think you've
Very
got a
good.
lot of value and a lot of excitement to add to the PDO thread space and just the aesthetic space in general. But before we dive into our conversation, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Been in the aesthetic space for approximately 20 plus years. We like to joke that some of us are the grandfathers of this industry. When no one knew what Botox was, that's where we were. And I've gone on to do so much, but it's not just about me within the field, it's having the right team to carry you forward. And that team is very important. So we've done many amazing things. We have our Diamond Works podcast. We have a full-fledged office in New York City where we are very busy. We have a brand new office in Boca Raton, Florida, which is coming along beautifully. I like to call that my gallery. It's just gorgeous with the palm trees and so forth. I love it. But more than that, I decided to write a book about the industry, about my journey, but also about the psychology of aesthetics and medical beauty and medical tourism with industry itself. And what sparked me to do that was just myself. I traveled and I did some hair implants because I was going a little thin. So I practice what I preach. And if something bothers you, if you wake up and maybe something isn't quite right, you don't love the direction something is going, do something about it. We have the power and the technology today to do amazing things, which is to slow down the visual aging. So visual aging works into that ageism that we all hear about, where as you're getting older, you tend to disappear ever so slightly. You fade and fade. And one question I have, whether this truly exists, is when was the last person above the age of 60 or 70, stranger, that you've approached and had a conversation with? And many people will say, wow, I haven't thought of that. No, not really. What we're looking at is not negative, it's ingrained in us. It's ingrained in every human being on earth. And what it is, we shy away from the things that creates any negativity within our mind, whether that negativity came from past trauma, psychological trauma, or just time itself. And we tend to gravitate toward the smoother, brighter complexion, the more lifted features, or what we like to use the word beauty. And beauty can mean so many things. I'm using that term very vaguely, beauty. So with ageism, how do we combat this? How do we combat someone who's in the 50s, 60s, 70s, or even 80s who feel younger, who wants to be active, who wants to be a part of society and commerce, but who's left behind because they're not going to get that promotion, or they're not going to get the job they interviewed with, or they have less friends. They're not going to partake in the parties that are occurring because they're left out. Well, now we have the technology to do that. We have toxins, and there are six of them available in the United States. There's 150 available in the rest of the world. We have fillers, 20 fillers in the US, again, hundreds in the rest of the world. So toxins are going to relax the face. It's going to stop those lines from creeping in. It's going to remove some of the negative lines and shadows that we don't like to see, but also that creates an intense or stressful look. So, many women talk about the resting bitch face. That is a true thing. And that's because the lines in the face are actually going forward and down. So if I drew a cartoon character and I wanted to make him angry, I would put the eyebrows down. If I want to make him older, I would put two lines under his eyes. If I want to make him even older, I would create a little shadow by the jaw region, or I would extend the face and make it a little bit more square and wider. So that's what we're doing, but we're doing it in a 3D fashion with time. We know that toxins are going to relax these muscles and keep a smooth vacation face. We know that fillers are going to enhance and recreate the shapes that we're losing because we all lose the shape of the face. And there's only two shapes that we're interested in the face, which are angles and curves. There's no other shapes in the face. Some people are beautiful because of the curves. Some are beautiful because of the angles. Angelina Jolie, for example, the sharp angles that she may have, the definition. I think others have a mix of angles and curves. We know that fillers are there to enhance that. We're not going to get into the negative portion of fillers, which I would love to, but there's not enough time. But now we have to elevate. We can relax, we can reshape, but what about elevation? What about brow elevation, temple elevation, cheek elevation, nose elevation? What about jowls? What about removing the jowls? Who wants jowls? The last I looked, no one said me. So no one wants jowls. Elevation of the mandibular angle, elevation of the neck. What does that? Filler can't do that. And if you try, you're going to have that pillow face because fillers have weight. Fillers bind to water. If you've ever lifted 1 gallon of water or 5 gallons of water, is weight. When weight is added to the fillers, then we have that downward kind of gravitational pull on the face. So now the individual doesn't have the lines, but the face is wider and it's heavier. And that doesn't lend to what that patient originally wanted. So now we have sprays that are not going to replace the fillers because sprays does not replace fillers. There's a space for every device that we use in the face. Just like I say, there's over 150 million individuals within the United States. There should be no aggressive competition. There's so much out there. So we have the toxins that relax, the fillers that enhance, reshape, and now we have the threads that elevate. These three must be used together in unity to create the most natural looking face. And it's never one or the other. Sometimes it baffles me that patients are afraid of threads, but not of filler. But threads have less adverse events and problems than fillers. Fillers have a dangerous side. They're wonderful, but they have a dangerous side. Threads do not. In saying that, every result depends on the practitioner and the training of the practitioner. Sometimes I become disappointed that we as human beings need to put others on pedestals and worship them. And then we get a handful of celebrity injectors and we do the same thing. And so everyone starts injecting one way. And there's never one way to inject. Every person on stage have done the work to be on stage and they deserve to be on stage. But there's never one way to skin a cat.
This is a fabulous conversation so far. I am totally digging everything you're saying. And it's information that I think new injectors need to hear, but it's also information that seasoned injectors need to be reminded of because it's just like you said, the 3D approach that you referred to. What do you do to set yourself apart from the competition?
Results. Now, I used to say we want 100% satisfaction. We cannot satisfy 100% because there's always that 1% that's gorgeous, but there's always something wrong with it. I always say no one should leave your office looking worse than they came. Everyone should leave your door with a smile and with a better outcome. Meaning we have to remove the redness, the swelling, the bruising. If we can remove that while they're exiting our door, we've done an amazing job. If your patient is leaving your office and they're swollen or they're very red, there's a breakdown in the technique. Something has to be revised. So I have an atraumatic technique called diamond touch technique. So if you see in my office, I have a lot of diamonds all over my office, right? So this is diamond touch technique, which I call the diamond standard. And not like the gold standard in standard medicine. The diamond standard for me is making sure that we take those rough edges off, we clean that diamond and we present it to the world as they leave the office. And that's that diamond we're looking for. And everyone has a different shape and facet, just like a diamond is cut. No two diamonds are the same and no two faces are the same. So how do we get these results? It's all based on the landmarks. And understanding the landmarks comes from the anatomy, not just the hard anatomy. I instruct some cadaver classes, and that has helped me understand more about the face. So there's anatomy and there's anatomy. There's the physical anatomy, fat pads, lymph nodes, the SMAS layers, the dermis, the different levels of the dermis, the nerves, where's the connections of the muscles, what are the muscles doing over time, what does the fat do over time, how is the lymphatic drainage system affected over time, how is the skin affected over time? So this is the physical anatomy. But now there's that beauty anatomy. There's this, how does one area of the face contribute to another area to enhance that area? It's not just the cheek. When someone looks at another person and proclaim they're beautiful, they're not looking at the nose and saying you're beautiful. No one's looking at your lips and saying you're beautiful or your eyebrows and saying you're beautiful. They're looking at you and they're saying you're beautiful, which means there's a harmony we're attempting to find. You can't find that unless you're also working with threads. Because again, the toxin is going to relax, the fillers are going to reshape, re-enhance, but the threads are going to connect all of these regions together.
I
So,
like that. I
so,
like
so
that.
to answer that question is result. Your results, at this point now, I speak to all of the beginner, intermediate, and advanced injectors. Everything about that patient visit should be the results. It should never be us. What does the patient want? How do we know what the patient wants? We have to listen. Your beauty is not the same as my beauty. Your lift is not the same as my lift. Your fullness is not the same as my fullness. Your large lips are not the same as my large lips. But we have to listen deeper than what the words are saying. We have to connect to the patient. That's where empathy comes from. We have to connect to the patient and try our best to understand what the patient's words mean, not what the patient words mean to us as medical providers, because we are catering to the patient. So that patient in my chair, she's the queen. That guy in my chair, he's the king, and I am servicing them. So I need to know exactly what their need. My success, besides many other factors, my beautiful wife, she works in the background behind the scenes and she keeps this whole mess together. I do my jobs and my pokes and she really takes care of everything else. But it's all about success. And quick money comes fast, but also you lose that fast as well. And this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. We're going slow enough to be as good as we possibly can.
See PDO threads fitting into that marathon for you and your practice and the return on investment that you've experienced.
During the pandemic, many practitioners had time to take courses. And one of those were PDO threads. So it was great for the PDO community to have these threads. In the last 5 years, how many thread companies are around? But there's only a few that really stand out the test of time. Now, how does it fit in my ROI? The biggest bang for your buck is going to be the threads, hands down, especially if you can create a wonderful job. Toxins you should be making from every vial of toxin, you should be making minimum of 1,000. For every syringe of fillers, typically you'll make less than that 1,000, but you should be anywhere between 500 plus. It doesn't mean you're charging a ton of money for each syringe. What it means is your patient believes in you and you're using the recommended amount to achieve the goals that you and the patient are making. And the patient leaving your room, that should be around that number and up. I'm talking about one syringe. Multiple, then obviously that number increases. Credits are different. And what I find is that practitioners are taking the same strategy that they use with toxins to apply to threads. 2007-8, we wanted a way to monetize toxins because everyone required different units. Some brilliant person, along with Groupon, decided to add units. So one unit, $20 or $10 and so forth. So it was unit per price for the threads. The problem with that is there's no standardization for a unit. So a patient doesn't know what they're purchasing. A patient can purchase a gallon of milk. They know they have a gallon of milk. When you go to competitive or pop-up med spas, you don't know what you're getting. You don't know what a unit is. If I hold a vial in front of anyone and tell them this is 50 units, so they're spending their money without knowing what they're getting. And when it comes to money, we have to be very careful and do our due diligence. So I don't charge per unit. Now, so I don't go off into a tangent here, I don't charge per thread. It shouldn't be. I charge for a good job. I charge for the results that the patient is asking me for. And so if I try to monetize per thread and the amount, you're never going to do a great job for the patient, because if you require additional one more thread, now you're calculating, should I charge the patient another 400 or 600 or 1,000 or 200? This should not be the equation for the patient's face. So you should not be charging per thread. I do understand that's the direction it's going. So hopefully I can get the word out there for the creators and the true artists in medical aesthetics to charge for your amazing job and don't charge per thread.
We very much support that, very much. Kind of charging per thread and just different industry trends that you're experiencing. Something that everybody's doing in the industry that they should stop doing.
That's a very loaded question. It's so many things. I would say most practitioners become better over time. Every practitioner becomes better over time. How do we become better? We become better because we listen, we see, and we try to adopt. There are many training institutes out there. And if training institutes don't have some type of standard for results that are necessary to grow someone's practice, we're going to have many practitioners haphazardly throwing many different types of techniques into the mix, which is dangerous for threads. Because with threads, you would find that if your technique is not on point, you are not getting your results. If your technique doesn't allow you to circumnavigate the face and latch on, hold on, or lock onto the particular area that we're trying to elevate, you're not going to have great results. Or if you have decent results, 4 to 6 months, they're gone. So I would tell practitioners what to stop doing. Stop allowing the commercialization of training institutes to take you on the wrong path to success. Several years back, you go online and there's maybe a handful of training institutes. Today there's 100 or maybe 1,000. And there's the celebrity trainers, and it's getting out of hand. So this is what disappoints me about the industry, in that as long as someone looks beautiful, they're amazing. And this is the case. If your patients are happy, they're coming back to you. If your patients trust you, they're coming back to you. If you can guarantee your patients that 99%, you can't guarantee anything in medicine, but if you can give that 99% of patient satisfaction, you are going to be successful, period. If you can teach a 12-year-old to inject, and 50% of the patients are going to think he or she's a genius because it's not that hard to inject. I'm not talking about threads that we're injecting, but can that 12-year-old garner 99% patient satisfaction? That's the hard part. So a beginner can have maybe 40, 50% patient satisfaction, intermediate, maybe 70, 80, but that 30% is really hurting you. So one thing we do is one thing we says, maybe I can save on the training and I will learn as I go and get better. But within the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, you're getting better. You've got hundreds of people who are not referring anyone to you. So the reality is you're not growing the way you should. Every year you should have 10 to 15% growth in what's coming into your office financially, sometimes more. If that's not happening, we have to reflect and we have to blame ourselves as the injector. You're the painter, you're the artist. So if your patient is unhappy with something, it's never the patient's fault. It's never the patient's fault. The patient didn't ask you to buy the hammer to fix the kitchen or to buy the cement to pave the garage. You're the one who chose the cement and you chose to mix the cement a certain way and you chose to pave the cement a certain way. It's the same as this industry. If you choose a product that is inferior to another, because we cannot say better. So let's say you choose a product that is inferior to another and you don't have great results. It's your fault. Because if we don't do that research and if we don't understand what the better products are, companies are always going to give you inferior products. Now, any company can find a bunch of docs on a study and have results that favor them. We know this. Anecdotal information is extremely important. If you have a study that says this toxin, filler, or thread does that, and you've noticed that for 1 year or 6 months, it's not happening, you have to align that together. And then you have to look at yourself. So maybe it's me. Maybe it's my training. The more training you have, the better you become, the more knowledgeable you are to understand that science dictates what a particular filler or thread will do. Not the rep, not the company spokesman, not the VP of sales, not anyone, because one goal is to get product in every injector's hand. So if we have thousands of injectors doing mediocre work, that hurts the entire industry.
We did not rehearse this conversation,
Now,
but everything you just said is so spot on to my beliefs and my track record in this industry. I get told probably 2 to 3 times a month, "Hey, Stacy, if you want to watch the company grow, you need to hire an influencer. You need to have a master injector that's got 100,000 followers. Why don't you pay them to use your brand?" I, I'm not about the social media followers. I'm about the results. And the results come from us connecting with injectors who know what they're doing, who aren't hot dogging it out there with threads and having all kinds of complications and adverse reactions. We want the best of the best. And if that comes at the cost of my bottom line, I would rather grow slowly for the long term with the right people on our books rather than having a mass shotgun effect of throwing threads out to everybody just to get a social media rise.
yes, and I would add to that. We've seen influx of private equity that's coming into the market. That is adding another layer of difficulty. If your practice is seeing, let's say, for example, 100 patients a week, and private equity needs you to bump that up to 1,000 so we can kind of buy your company and give you a really nice exit package. How do you get 1,000 more people? How do you beef things up so quickly without beefing up your technique, your approach? your evaluations. The practitioner has to beef up, not the company.
Mhm.
I understand business has to work and I get it. I get it. And maybe if I'm approached, I'm closely approached. But maybe if there was a private equity that had my vision, I would consider it. Because my vision is one where unless you create standards of care, meaning that you have practitioners in your office who are not doing haphazard techniques, then that would align with the type of either franchise or scale of offices that I would be involved in. But when you have 10 different practitioners in 20 different locations and no one is doing the same, the techniques that work together, I'm being very nice here, that work together, how do you know that your practice is going to be successful next year? When you hire injectors from different locations who've been trained by many different people, how do you know your practice will continue to grow? I am a one practitioner office, and around 2011 or 12, there was a surgeon on stage. It was a Mersey vein. And this surgeon was saying in 10 years, medical aesthetics would likely be a standalone entity. I looked around the room, my people are clapping, but I was standalone 8 years prior. So my income doesn't come from anything other than medical aesthetics since around 2005, 6. Because of that, I had to force myself to be the best. Forcing myself to be the best meant that I really needed to understand the science behind the product. I had to understand the anatomy. Anatomy books today are not the same as anatomy books even 10 years ago. There's a lot of facial anatomy that is missing from books prior to, let's say, 2005, 2008. So I had to understand the anatomy. I had to understand the business of aesthetics in order to grow. And today I'm still standalone. I do amazing work. We're always busy. New York City is never not busy. We're always busy. I do internships. I do training also. And I do not go for the masses. So I don't need 10 internists and 100 trainees a year. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in that balance of life where my family can enjoy me and my patients can also enjoy me and I can enjoy them both. So with that, I cannot dive into all of the commercialism. I have to focus on the products that work, the products that I know within a 90 percentile that I can depend on that product for my patient to be happy. And this is why I started out saying that there are many different products, but there's only a few that are really key. Of the 18 plus fillers on the market, I use 4 of them only, and the rest I don't. Of the plethora of thread companies that are coming, I use only 2. I've used the others. Now I use only 2. I have patients coming back to me 2, 3, 4 years later, and they still don't have the jowls that they lifted. So that begs the question, how do threads really work? Now, I understand the 2 mechanisms. You have the physical pull, and then you have the fibroblastic portion that allows that second contraction that really invigorates that lift. That comes months later. How do I protect that? I found a way to do that. How do I stop the threads from falling, from patients losing results? How do I get to that superior or inferior portion of the jowl to lift it and still have it looking natural? I've had to solve that problem. You're not going to find articles on all of this because it's brand new. So a lot of the progress in aesthetic medicine came from anecdotal evidence translated into the hard evidence and the studies and articles that we have today. But it has to start from someplace. It starts from the office. And right now, what I find is injectors don't know how to lock their threads. So if you put threads in and you don't lock your threads, of course, within a few months, it's going to slide down. You're going to lose it. But that has to do with understanding how threads truly work. I have many patients who tell me they don't want to do threads. They don't see good results. Or many patients who tell them that surgeons say threads don't work. This is ridiculous. Threads work. The practitioner didn't work. But the threads work. You just have to know how to use it. I would touch base on a little sensitive thing here. Some surgeons, and I've heard it for myself, say that if you're doing threads, you may not be able to do a facelift in the future due to scar tissue and so forth. But I would ask any of the surgeons who say that if they were turning away a $20,000 or $30,000 facelift, if that patient approached them who had threads. The answer is no. They would all do it. So does it really prevent patients from having surgery in the future? Of course not. Second is if my patients happen to do facelift, which sometimes it is necessary. Again, there are millions of people in this country. They're all getting older. Every plastic surgeon have more than enough patients. If my patients happen to do surgery, they still need my threads to enhance and to create longevity in that work. And many times also to correct some of the negative effects of the plastic surgery. For example, the warped lines that occur on the skin after plastic surgery. I use threads to correct this. There's a place for everything. The problem in the world occurs when one person or one group wants everything. And so everyone else gets demolished and mediocrity survives.
I feel like I'm talking to an expert myself. However, I have an interesting question for you. If you were sitting next to an expert in the industry right now, what would you ask them?
Wow, these are very big questions. I would ask them not what they're looking forward to in aesthetics. What's the most disappointing thing that's occurring in medical aesthetics, and what will be the path of fixing it? Here's the thing, because when we ask a positive question, it's already positive. We're not learning too much. We have to ask the negative questions. So with the negative questions, the answers are always solutions. When we throw positives, like how do you feel the industry is growing and then how great that's all positive. You don't get negative back. But we know that positive and negative exist together. So I tend to like to ask the negative first. Afterwards, I can always jump to the positive, but the negative is existing and exists now. And if we can work on that, everyone is just happier.
It's absolutely brilliant response. And I ask that question in almost every podcast. And truth be told, you were the first person who has ever turned it that way to be a solution oriented conversation rather than
Absolutely.
a warm and fuzzy conversation. I think that's
Absolutely.
absolutely brilliant. For newer injectors, what would you tell them to do or to anticipate as they start their career? How would you help mentor them in the very beginning?
At first, they have to really understand that it's a very competitive industry, extremely competitive. And you can't just be good and do well. Second, they have to understand that they cannot rely on your previous or your first job to carry you. Yes, you need it. You have a family, but you have to dive into medical aesthetics. It have to be the only option you have. There's no option B, right? There's nothing to fall on. It has to be aesthetics. That only happens if you're able to reevaluate yourself regularly and observe what's happening to the patient. My training institute is injectable coaching. It's not teaching, it's injectable coaching. Because when you have a trainee, many times you have to change the angle of approach with that needle or cannula. You have to hold their hand and show them why this direction or this angle or this force is not going to lend to a good result. And that's before the product gets into the patient's face. There's a lot of whole thing that's involved. I would say to the intermediates who have been injecting for 5 to 10 years, if you still have a second job, then maybe injectables isn't for you. Because if you are injecting 5 plus years, you should have so many people that you've retained that you don't have time for a second job. For injectors who are in other specialties, and I know this is going to rub some the wrong way, don't mind. If you're a dentist and you have to subsidize with Botox, then maybe you're not good at two things, right? Because if you're good as a dentist, you have more than enough patients. You don't have to dip into Botox and fillers. So when you do that, now you're dividing your time into two. And you cannot be great at anything if you're doing multiple different things. Because with aesthetics alone, and I will tell you, I don't dive into the lasers because if I do, I'm taking my time away from my thread results and my spinner result and my toxin result. So I don't want everything. Let others have the lasers. Let others do the Morpheus and the lit. I want to focus on my talent, my skill, and what I love. And what I love is toxin filler threads. The third, I would say to the advanced injectors is we never stop learning. There's always something more that we can gain from someone else. Many times I'm on stage, I'm talking to the crowd, to the audience, and someone asks a question and it makes me think. So even though I'm at a point where I feel I'm close to the top of my achievements in medical aesthetics, there's still something else that I'm learning. And so being humble is necessary for you to grow. Because if you are not humble, you are going to not only be left behind, but you would teach everyone else that mediocrity. You would teach others the deficits that you have. So we don't want to carry forward things that we learned in 2010. This is 2025. How many times have you heard practitioners say, after your Botox, you can't lay down for 4 hours, you can't work out? At what point don't they understand that once you inject toxin and it goes into the neuron cell, how can you squeeze it out or sweat it out? Or how can gravity drag it out of you when you lay down? You cannot. But this is rhetoric that was told to us before 2010, 2005. So practitioners continue the same old rhetoric because as we get older, we have difficulty incorporating new knowledge. And when we do have new knowledge, we have an added difficulty of implementing that knowledge. So it's one thing to learn something and to know it and to regurgitate it on a test and become certified. It's another thing to implement it to your patients and your staff. So that is my message for beginners, intermediates, and advanced.
I love it. Very succinct. Which brings us into an unprompted question. Tell us about your book.
A year and a half ago, I finished my book. It was a year-long journey, maybe a little bit more. And a year long because so many things are changing. And when you put your heart and soul into creating a book, you have to dive into your past and you have to extract the things that you didn't necessarily like to begin with. So you re-experience some of the traumas that you moved away from. And it's the book, The Lust for Medical Beauty. This was all me. I will say my editors, within the first chapter, they made a few changes. And after an uncomfortable 1 hour conversation, they decided not to touch anything at all. My heart is in this. Every word in here is my word. And it's not hyperbole. It's not there just to sell a book. You don't make money from books, but it's there to help individuals who felt like the world was against them or something was against them and they had no choice out. But also for injectors to understand that you can be as great as you want to be if you are able to see through the white noise. if you're able to not compete with everyone on Instagram and Facebook, compete with yourself only. So this book, The Lust for Medical Beauty, talks about my journey to the aesthetic space from being an immigrant in this country without his papers. We eventually got there, who eventually found a path wasn't easy. And that allowed me to reach a point where I can give so much back to everyone who has a conversation with me. And so I love it. I'm not going to bore you with any quotes, but this book is on me. And if you have any interest, it's on Amazon. I think it's in a bunch of other places. I don't know everywhere. I don't study those statistics. I don't look at them, but it's out there for anyone who feel they need some insightful, heartfelt information on traveling through what we're going through today or any other difficult time.
I myself can tell you I'm going to order it today.
That's been
I'm
amazing.
excited to learn more. And PA Clark, this will not be the last time we hear from you. This has been a fascinating conversation. And I think that we've just barely touched the tip of the iceberg. Other than your book, where else can people find you out there?
There's Diamond Works podcast, and similar to my office, Diamond Works Med Spas. They can find me. Boca Raton it's honestly, if you search my name, you will see me. You will find me. I'm speaking at an event 1 week from today, Women Warriors. And this is a celebration for International Women's Day, offering my support to career women who may or may not be contemplating medical aesthetics or not, and why I believe it is important and it's a necessary tool for everyone, not just women, but for everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time. I look forward to diving deeper into new subjects with you and sharing all of your wisdom with our listeners out there. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed every second of it.